Shalom, everyone. Very excited that today we have a special guest, Mo Borelli,
Yes, sir.
and from Shiloh, Israel,
That's true.
neighbor to David Rubin, I'm
Yep.
sure.
Yeah.
No, David and his
Good
son.
man.
But everybody, there's been big news that has been breaking forth about red heifers in the land of Israel. And uh, it's Eliyahu Berkowitz, who's a friend of mine. He filmed the arrival of the heifers in Israel, and I think that flooded the internet. And everybody's going, wow, and everything.
Yeah.
Now, you are firsthand, right, hands-on. You're right in there with the heifers.
Yeah, that's true. So I started working with the organization Bonei Israel, which they're the ones who brought the heifers over actually from Texas, from here, and they brought them over to Israel. Right now, the heifers are up north in an undisclosed location, but we're going to be moving them very shortly to Shiloh, to ancient Shiloh, right next to where I live. So I have that luck and merit to be able to be so close to them. And I do some of the social media as well for the organization, so I get to go up there to see the heifers and take pictures of them and do videos with them to explain and help educate about them.
Well, I know that B'nai Israel is not just the red heifers. There are many projects that y'all work on, and B'nai Israel means to build Israel.
Exactly.
Um, but the I think one of the things that first off people are going to want to know is every bit of information you can give us
Yeah,
about
for sure.
the paradama, the red heifers, and um, so what brought B'nai Israel? I mean, we're talking some major money here in order to fly 5 calves
Yeah,
from Texas to Israel. You've got all kinds of things that you're going to have to deal with to cope with that are not the norm because you can't tag them, but they
that's
have
true.
to be marked. You've got a tremendous amount of money just to get them there, and then to care for them, feed them, and everything like that. What led you to why? Why did B'nai Israel decide to do this?
So first of all, like you said, our main goal is to build up Israel, physically and spiritually. So we do a lot of projects other than the red heifers, like you were saying. We have the Gilgal site, and we have the tomb of the prophet Samuel in Jerusalem, and we're reviving all these biblical sites and bringing the Bible to life in Israel. And that's the same thing with the story of the red heifers. We see that we're so lucky to be in a generation where we're in the redemption. We're in the midst of it,
Yes.
and we want to be part of the next step. We don't want to just get stuck in the history books. We want to help be part of the next step of redemption. And we think that the red heifers possibly are that next step because we know that it's also a purification process for the temple, which I'm sure we'll get into soon. But we see that as a big project that will bring a lot of awareness
Yes.
to the whole subject of the temple and purification and the redemption process, which we're all waiting for.
Now you're Orthodox,
Yes, sir.
and this is I got asked actually by a rabbi. He says, "Is this a Messianic group?" I said, "No, no, they're Orthodox. Every one of them's Orthodox. It's being it's under rabbinical leadership,
Yes, sir.
and I understand the Temple Institute is being very involved with y'all. That's Rabbi Israel Ariel. He was one of my mentors, and so uh, tell me more.
Yeah. So Bonei Israel is a Jewish organization. We work very closely with the rabbis and the Temple Institute, who are helping us out a lot with this whole project, of course. And on the other hand, we do work a lot with non-Jewish groups and individuals, especially here in Texas, who were helping to hunt for the red heifers and helped us find them and bring them over to Israel. And I think we're very blessed to be able to work together with other groups that are not just Jewish, because that's part of the goal. Part of the goal is to be able to come together for these beautiful, beautiful things.
And that's exactly, what's described as would happen in the last days, is that all the nations will come up and so
Exactly.
forth.
The temple will be a house of prayer for all of the nations.
When was the last red heifer before this?
About 2,000 years ago, the
About
second
2,000
temple.
years ago. I've actually, the first red heifer that broke on the scenes, in almost 2,000 years, was up by Haifa. That was a red heifer. They had named her Melody, and she made international news. I wasn't involved with it, but I did go see her several times, talked with the rabbi that was with her, and then we got involved in through GLC, God's Learning Channel, in raising money for a second candidate. This was in the early 2000s, and both of them disqualified. But why, if it's been 2,000 years since the last red heifer, why do we need one?
So our goal is to rebuild the third temple, and it's something that we're all waiting for, Jews and Christians alike, because we understand that that's going to be the place, the house of prayer for all of the nations, a place where everybody can come and worship God together, worship Hashem, and we need the red heifer for that process, in order to be able to go up to the Temple Mount and bring sacrifices and worship Hashem. We need to be pure from the impurity of death. There are certain levels of impurities,
Yeah.
And some of them can be purified by immersing in a mikveh, which is a body of fresh rain or spring water.
Mm-hmm.
But the impurity of death can only be purified by the ashes of the red heifer. And in order to go up to the temple to bring a sacrifice, we have to be pure of those impurities.
Well, now, right now, I want to clarify that a little, because many people go up, many Jews go up to the Temple Mount today.
Yes,
in fact, I saw an interview, I think, earlier this morning of Rabbi Glick up on the Har HaBayit, and he was actually talking with one of our research members and while he was up there. But there are areas that we can go right now, but there are areas that we cannot go until there's a red heifer and the sprinkling, the cleansing ceremony, which takes 7 days.
Exactly.
But I want to read this. This is out of the tractate Kelim, which means vessels, out of the Mishnah. And just as you said, it talks about, starting in Mishnah 6 of chapter 1, it says there's 10 levels of Kedusha, or sanctification. And so it starts off with the land of Israel, then it goes to cities surrounded by a wall, meaning cities that were surrounded by a wall at the time of Joshua. And he gives the reasons. Why is this more sanctified than another place? And so then he goes to Jerusalem, and this is in Kelim 1:8, and it says, within the walls is more sanctified than these, meaning within the walls of Jerusalem. And then it says that you can eat holy offerings, second degree offerings, and second tithe. And Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount, is more sanctified than this, and then it lists 4 different types of impurities that you could have. Like a woman during her menstrual flow cannot go up on the Temple Mount, but there are actually 4 different ones. Then it says the Kel. Now, the Kel is a platform that goes around the inner courtyards. So you have 2 inner courtyards. You have what's called the Azra, and you have the court of the women. And so the Kel, it goes around, and what it says, the Kel is more sanctified than this. For Gentiles, okay, so a non-Jew cannot go beyond this point, or go to this point, and one rendered impure by a corpse may not enter there.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is what you were talking about, corpse impurity. And the red heifer is the only way to achieve corpse purity, to be free from it.
Exactly. So back to your question about Jews going up to Har HaBayit, to the Temple Mount today.
Yes.
So we only go in around this area of the khel, and we immerse in the mikveh, in the body of water, so that we're
Right.
pure from the other impurities. And there's even certain parts of the Temple Mount which are the how do you say harchava, extension, the
Yeah.
extension of from King Herod.
Uh-huh.
In
First the
Hebrew, Moses.
Hasmoneans and then Herod.
Exactly.
Yes.
So his extension does not have that kedusha
Yes.
that we mentioned before. So there, people go up. Essentially, you could even go up without being pure from the other impurities that you need the mikveh for.
Right.
But we take extra precautions. So
Yeah, there's an area that is spoken of in the Mishnah, that the area that is actually the real Temple Mount is 500 cubits by 500 cubits.
right.
So that got added to by the Hasmoneans. If you think of Hanukkah, okay, that's the start of the
Exactly.
Hasmonean era, and then Herod. Okay, all right. So. Why is it so hard to get? I mean, why 2,000 years? Why are you having to fly calves from Texas? Why don't you just go grab a calf over in Israel? And why is it so difficult?
Well, we were looking for them in Israel as well, but we had to search all over because it is very, very difficult. The qualifications to be a pure red heifer are very high standards, meaning if the heifer has any white or black hairs, she's disqualified. And it has to be female. She's disqualified. If she has any blemish, she's disqualified. If she had a yoke put on her, she's disqualified. If she plowed the field, she's disqualified. If you even just lean on her, she's disqualified.
Wow. What about age? Anything on age?
So age also, she has to be in between. In order to do the ceremony, she has to be in between the age of 2 and 3. So if the heifers that we have now, for example, they're about 1 year and 4 months old. So we have to wait until they're 2 years old, and they have to stay red, which is another complication.
Now I've got a difficult technical question. The Cohen, the priest
Yes.
that slaughters her, he has to be appointed by a high priest. Okay, because we have that Aaron was told to slay a red heifer, but he had his son Eleazar do it. He
Right.
didn't do it himself. Okay, so we have to have a high priest, Kohen Gadol, and it says that the individual, this is in the Torah, the individual that slaughters the heifer,
Needs to be pure.
he can't have corpse impurity.
Exactly.
But we have a problem because anywhere you walk now, pretty much, you get corpse impurity. How do you handle that one?
So we actually do have about, I think it's 9 priests, Kohanim, that since they're kids, they were raised to stay away from anything that can bring them corpse impurity, and until this day they keep that mitzvah, and they're preparing themselves for this event. So we already have that ready and in place. Regarding the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, honestly, I'm not sure exactly how it'll work to choose the high priest, but I think it's just a question of choosing one priest who will be the high priest.
You're right. It'll have to be appointed by the Sanhedrin. There's a
Right.
Sanhedrin forming. I want to read. This is out of the Tractate Parah, which deals with it means cow. Okay, so it says, this is in Parah 3:2. This is what you were talking about. There were courtyards in Jerusalem built on rock, meaning bedrock, with hallowed space beneath them, because of a grave in the depths. Okay, they got to make sure there's no graves.
Right.
They used to bring pregnant women, meaning these were women that were priests. So you don't think that priests are just men. The girls that are born from priestly parents, that's what it's talking about here, who would give birth there and raise their children there. This is what you mentioned. They brought ox, and then it goes on and it says, but they have to stay in this environment. They can't just go walking around. And so everything, they kind of have a special, unique growing up in order to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
It
very
is.
it's very difficult, but there are a few people like that we know of.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because you have a red heifer has between 2 and 3, and these kohanim, they have to be a certain age before they can even perform
Right.
this ceremony. So you can't say, "Hey, we got a red heifer. Let's go have some women that are priests have babies,
Right.
and we're going to do it," because you're gonna lose your heifers.
Right.
You have
It
to
has
do
to
it
all work out at the same
exactly,
time.
exactly.
But we have it pretty much set up because we have the kohanim, we have the priests, and we have the heifers. So we're really just waiting for the heifers now.
Okay, what about the site? You got to have a specific location.
Exactly. So the a common misconception is that the red heifer is a sacrifice,
Yeah, it's
but
not.
it's not. It's a ceremony.
Right,
A sacrifice is done on the altar on the Temple Mount, but specifically the red
right.
heifer says, the Torah says that it has to be outside of the camp
Yes.
and across
Zvak.
from.
It's going to be slaughtered, but it's not a korban.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's a ceremony, and outside of the camp of the Temple Mount and across from the Holy of Holies would be east, which is on the Mount of Olives.
Yes.
And our organization actually does have a plot of land in
Right, I know
exactly
it.
the right spot,
Yeah.
and possibly where the previous 8 ceremonies, because the first was Moses,
Yeah,
and then
out in the
8 more
wilderness.
during the first and second temple. So possibly that's where they were done.
Yeah, very good, very good. Back years ago, we used to go out to the location with Rabbi Richmond, who formerly was with the Temple Institute. He and I have been friends for a long time, and we've actually done temple conferences together. And but they had discovered by ground radar facilities, what they thought were the facilities like with the mikvot and stuff like that. And he had approached me one time about us raising the money to get it translated from Hebrew into English. We never did. Other projects came up and they kind of took precedence. But I've been to that location numbers of times, and it's locked now. We can't get in. But okay, so you've got 5 heifers. Are they all still qualified, or?
No, so some of them are there are 2 that have been disqualified. One of them has a bunch of white hairs on her tail.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately is very common. That's why it's so hard to find them.
Yep.
But so she's been disqualified. We're not giving up on her yet because we're planning on breeding her so that we can have more red heifers, because once one of the heifers are bred, she's automatically disqualified.
Right.
So if we already have one that's disqualified and we know she has good genes because her mother here in Texas is still red. I think she's above the age of 4 or something like that, the mother, if I'm not mistaken. And she's still red, pure red. So the problem with her is that, like you said before, she's above the age of 3, so she's no good, and she has the tag in her ear, so she's no good. But we know that she's still red, meaning that her offspring has a good chance to be red. So
Right.
even this one that got disqualified, we know that she has good genes. And going back just to the center that we're building in Shiloh.
Yes, I was going to ask you.
So it's not just a visitor center, it's also going to be a research center where we're going to be researching DNA. We're going to have DNA researchers there and all kinds of veterinarians and doctors and researchers to be on this project, because we want to have the highest possible chance to be able to have a red heifer. If it's not going to be one of the 5 that we brought to Israel, then we're working hard that it's going to be their next generation.
Yes.
And which is a very interesting question to go into detail, in the Mishnah and the Talmud, and try to understand
Yes.
how much can we be involved, get our hands dirty with trying to, let's say, recreate a perfect red heifer. Can we use DNA? Can we DNA modify a red heifer so that we have 100% chance of having a red heifer? And we think the answer is yes.
Well, I mean, you've got Yaakov. with the
Exactly.
goats,
Yeah.
okay, in Bereshit and Genesis, and he bred,
Right.
and so there's a precedent, and that'll be very interesting. I have a question. I want to read. This is out of the Tractate Midot,
Okay.
and it's talking about the gates of Har Habayit, and it says Har Habayit, once again, that's the Temple Mount. Two gates of Hold on the south serve for entry and departure. That's where the people came in through the tunnels from the south. Okay. Kipponis on the west serve for entry and departure. That's on the west. Okay. Tadi on the north did not serve for anything. Actually, it did. Disqualified priests exited through the Tadi gate. The eastern gate. All right. So Mount of Olives is east, on which was depicted Shushan HaBerah. Okay, Shushan means the city, Susa, which was the Persian capital, HaBerah, the palace, basically, of the Persian kings, because they gave permission to for the temple to be built back at the right before Eshel. Okay, through which the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, burning the cow, okay, so red heifer, and the cow and all its attendants deported to Har HaMishah. Now, in the Tractate Yoma, we're told there was a bridge. And there was a bridge for the Paradamah, the red heifer, and one for the Azazel goat at Yom Kippur. And how are you going to get the red heifer from, does it have to go from Har Habayit across, or how is that going to be done? Are you going to have a bridge?
So I think that the red heifer is done on the Mount of Olives, and then we have people coming straight from the ceremony on the bridge to the Temple Mount.
Okay.
I think that's the way it goes. I don't think we have to take the heifer from the Temple Mount to the Mount of Olives. It's the
Okay.
opposite. The people come straight from the ceremony where they're pure and go straight to the Temple Mount. And I think the bridge is also to protect them from possibly being defiled again by the corpse impurity on the way.
I'll tell you what I was told by several rabbis is that there is no requirement that it come from the Temple Mount. And the red heifer doesn't get corpse impurity.
Right.
Only people do.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So,
animals don't have.
Now, do you know who Ronnie Reich is? Professor Ronnie Reich. Okay, he's
sir.
one of the leading archaeologists. And he, with Eli Shukron, they are the ones that discovered the Pilgrim's Road and the pool, the Shiloach.
Right.
Anyway, Ronnie Reich was given a lecture a year and a half ago. And he mentioned that they now have a new theory about the bridge. You know, we see the bridge like spanning across the valley.
Right.
And they haven't been able to find any trace of this bridge. Well, they came out with an idea that the bridge actually goes like this down to the bottom, following the contour, doing cutbacks, and then comes back up, and it's just a bridge over 4 or 5 feet high. It's not huge,
Right.
okay? But the Kohen Gadol, the Kohen that slaughters the red heifer, how are you going to get him the moment he gets out and walks? The Mount of Olives is covered with graves.
Well, that's why we need the bridge.
Okay? Eli Yaakov Berkowitz had mentioned something in an interview that I did with him, is that maybe a litter, like a pirion,
Right.
they could literally carry him.
Right, like in the
in a
Mishnah
litter.
with the kids, they would put them
Yes,
on.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Technically, the technical issues I don't think are the problem. I really think the main issue here is the people being ready and and wanting this to happen. Because the second that everybody wants this to happen, then it'll happen. Because everything's in place. Technically, we can set up whatever needs to be set up, but we need the Jewish people and people from all over the world to come and support this event. Because I don't want to go too much into politics, but that
Yes.
not everybody is so with this idea.
Back in the 1990s, like 1990, 1989, somewhere around there, we would go up on the Temple Mount, and there wasn't hardly anybody there wasn't visitors, and if they were going to see the Dome of the Rock and that stuff. So there was non-Jewish visitors, and at that time there was a handful. I'm going to say less than 20 Jews
Wow.
that were going up on the Temple Mount every day, and everybody said they're crazies.
Wow.
It won't happen in our generation. It won't happen in 100 years. Yes, it's coming, but not. We don't.
won't see it.
We're not, and they weren't looking for it.
Right.
Everything's changed now. There's literally thousands
Yes,
of
sir.
Jews going, and that's what you're talking about. The attitude of the people has to
Exactly.
change. They have to want the temple.
Exactly. Exactly what you're saying. Just 10 years ago,
Yeah.
if you would go up to the Temple Mount, you would see Jews getting arrested left and right for just moving their
The
lips.
Yeah.
Or just he reached over to tie his shoes
Shoe.
or something, they jump on him and get arrested. And today, it's totally different.
Yes.
I was up there on Sukkot,
Uh-huh.
and we sing the Hallel,
Yes.
and
Psalm 113 to 118.
we as a group, we were singing, not screaming,
Yeah.
because the police kind of they got used to the fact that, first of all, there's a what's it called, Supreme Court
Yeah.
decision that there's freedom of religion and that Jews are allowed to pray on the Temple Mount, which is ridiculous to even think that someone would
That it would not be.
agree with that.
Yeah.
But that's the Supreme Court decision. But they added the in between the lines that the police have the authority to decide whether to allow right now for them to pray or not, if it might cause problems. And that little, the letters in between the lines
Yeah.
became the status quo.
Uh-huh.
So now, technically, Jews are not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount because it'll always cause a problem. But on the other hand, they got used to the fact that thousands of Jews are going up and are praying and want to pray, and it's harder to stop them. So they even pray out loud, they sing out loud, not, going crazy, because, nobody wants to get arrested. But
Sure.
But the police are even getting used to it, and it's getting better and better and better.